And they're actually all amongst us, so I'm going to ask them to stand up and introduce themselves. He was a big influence when I was studying, and still is, and he remains a very sort of integral part of my working life, really. So, and I felt that there was a space to put together. What he gave me was this sort of sense of freedom and almost. Right. So let me give you a brief description, brief outline of how this exhibition came about. It's called Combines, which is a term that artist Robert Rauschenberg used. So we've chosen 13 artists whose normal practice is to work with different materials.
Some people would say a mixed media is, oh, I paint on board and not on canvas, that's mixed media. But the real idea of mixed media, I think, is when you use different media.
I started off by working on canvas, and that was a long, long time ago. And then I started building up textures on canvas. And then I started using, wood and texturing that. So in other words, it was just a progression.
And different works use different languages. Some of them use a lot of different textures. Others are much simpler. In fact, I used to work in oil paint until the late 60s, until the pressures of American abstract expressionism were so much that I had to see what it was like being involved with acrylic. So ever since then, I've used acrylic.
And I take photographs and videos, and I started doing just painting on wood, and then I've become more and more interested in architecture.
It's a combination of joining different things together and adding art materials like conventional paints or varnishes.
And it's a process of building up layer upon layer of photographic images, fabric, resin, paint.
I do mix various techniques together on one painting. So I will draw on a painting, but then I will add really thick paint. And I will mix text with image.
I'm kind of interested in making those boundaries tremble a bit, really, and moving aside from them, in the hope that doing that is part of the contributes to the life of the potential life of the pieces that I'm making.
So I'm forever looking at little discarded objects on the pavement. There is so much wastage, and so much is thrown away.
So I'm using the found objects of the trees and different found objects. But also I actually incorporate photography into the work itself.
The second stage will be the physical transformation, which it is the combinations, the compositions of the materials, how to combine them together.
I started to think about using materials that actually were perhaps industrial, household, things that are not normally used.
I gather loads and loads of images from newspapers and from magazines and things that just catch my eye.
I've got a almost pathological interest in materials and things, objects.
There's been a great deal of recycling in my work.
What I'm particularly interested in is how people adapt their own buildings, for which corrugated metal is an ideal material.
I also use materials which they react each other, so water-based, oil-based. And in my studio, when I work, it looks like a chemistry laboratory.
The reason why I don't use, paint now, or just perhaps singly draw, is that situations are far too complicated just to put onto one surface.
Experimentation is key, and to lose yourself and then to sort of claw it back is a very important part of what I do.
I don't want to know what a painting is going to be like until I'm about 3/4 of the way or half of the way through.
I've saved my notes that I write to myself in the middle of the night, obsessively. And so for years and years I've saved, without any reason, I've saved those bits of paper that I've written notes on. And shopping lists, to-do lists.
But my practice, I think, is fairly original because it's autobiographical.
I very rarely use straight collage where I glue something onto anything because I want my paintings to last.
Well, once I do move between media, it's much more media that I feel I can draw into something that's going to have a visual, specifically visual quality eventually.
And I've always been quite involved with binding, knotting, weaving, and there's a great deal of gravity, in a sense, in my pieces.
I think it's sort of water and landscape, seascape, lakes, rivers, estuaries, you know, industrial quite often.
I've done a lot of work with nets, and that's very versatile. They can symbolise interconnectedness, and at the same time there's a lot of empty space. So I like the symbolism. I've done lots with the symbolism.
A lot of what I do comes from the way that relationship we have with the natural world is being manipulated.
I think my work tends to be more about the outside things rather than about me.
Somebody once said to me, do you have any studio assistants? And I say yes. Nature in the form of wind and rain, squirrels, snails, foxes, and all of nature's creatures that manage to wreck up things but also create new things.
My inspiration is mainly nature, of course. I have a strong connection with the nature.
It's my response to situations, events, and my experience.
I mean, for example, my car caught fire in Tesco's, had great plumes of smoke coming out of it, and the fire brigade tried to do something about it. And I had got a camera on me, so I took a few shots. Anyway, that produced about 3 or 4 paintings.
On a good day, you can be inspired by anything, basically. You don't have to sort of go looking for it, it'll come looking for you, as long as you're sort of receptive.
I've got this sort of rich reference now of material, photographic material, which I use in these new series of works.
Some of us believe that science are correct. Some of us believe that, like the creationists and so on, that the answers are to be found in the Bible. So I've always used something like the label, which is two-sided, to show the two sides of that argument.
It can be a cathartic process to actually make something to get through a particularly difficult situation. So that is describing something not verbally. If you make something physical, it almost removes the problem. I think that's probably a lot of the reason I make work as well. Yeah?
This desire that I have to make prints and to make transfers, photographic transfers, and to build up the surface that way has always been there at the forefront of what I do.
Because there's a great deal of concealment in my work, building up of layers, almost mummification sometimes, people do express an interest on the interior, the bit that is never shown.
The composition is absolutely crucial. If I get the composition wrong within that, and I get that in the wrong place, or, you know, the corridor too narrow, or then it's not going to work.
The idea of having a drawing means it's already confining the work. I mean, it's fine for lots of people, but and perhaps I wish I could do one painting when it's finished and then do another one. But to work it out what it's going to be beforehand, and then you square up a canvas, and then you do the top left one and the bottom right one, and that is totally meaningless for me.
One of the things I struggle with is making the work look as if I didn't make it. Making it just look as if it is. As a painter, that's exactly how I worked.
The arts can kind of contribute to each other. So, you know, it might be a text that comes from something completely unrelated to the visual arts, but that then pushes me in a certain direction.
You allow the viewer to, you know, to make interpretations of what you do, and I think that's what I do. I try to create a narrative in the work.
I think that's fun with mixed media. I say fun, but it's also like a necessity sometimes, because it's a different sort of zone. I mean, some people are happy with just one area, which is fine. But every now and again you need to sort of, I think, mix it up a bit, dirty the waters a bit.
My work is fairly intuitive, and I can be actually concentrating on listening to the radio in the background. And then an hour later, you know, discover that my hands have been working automatically almost.
I get a lot of ideas. Say wake up maybe about 5 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and the brain seems to be in that kind of cogitative state where it can be truly sort of creative, because it hasn't got all the concerns of every day kind of piling in on it or whatever.
So quite often I have to have frenzied work in a build-up, and then very, very long-term research, and so it's very varied for me.
Particular days of the week, I suppose that I would say that I would work all day in the studio.
But there are times which you don't do anything. You're just observing around you, the nature, or the thinking, there's reading.
Sometimes doing nothing is probably a good option.
I'm working on, I don't know, I suppose about 20 works at the same time now, which is, I don't think I've done that before.
Right, I normally go swimming first outside on Hampstead Heath in the pond all year round, and then I come back and then I work most of the day, and often evenings too. I like working in the evening a lot.
I get up very early in the morning at about 4:45 and then go to Bethnal Green and work for 4, 5 or 6 hours there. Then come back and have a siesta and have another day which starts after I wake up after my